March 16th, 1792, Gustav III is visiting the opera. He was a king that was tired of sharing power with the parliament. So he kept dissolving the parliament more and more and more, trying to dampen their power until he can get close to absolute power. He also wanted to build gigantic new palaces, redesign many of these parts of the historic center of Sweden and Stockholm. However, there were many threats on his life because he accumulated many enemies. People who were involved in business, people who were involved in parliament, and other nobles. He decided to come over to the opera one night. Despite all of his closest advisors saying, hey, you have threats on your life, you should not come. Even a few years before, he went to a famous fortune teller, astrologer, who told him, it's in your future to be killed in a public event. You better watch out. He decided to come here nonetheless. He came here to the Royal Opera here in the historic center of Stockholm. And as he was rummaging through the crowd, he got stuck in the crowd because there was way too many people. Everyone was masked. And suddenly he got a gunshot right in the back. He fell down to a seat and said, ouch, I'm hurt. But he didn't seem like he was in terrible danger at that moment. But then another one and another one. He's taken away, and then as he's being trying to be healed back to life, a doctor was in charge that apparently was his sworn enemy. He died 13 days later of a severe infection. Was it poisoning? Was it an actual infection? No one knows for sure. But that was one of the very first kings of Sweden to be assassinated here in the very city of Stockholm. Today we're going to explore the historic areas of this beautiful city, which is the oldest part of the city, Gamla. I'm Ariel, this is Urbanist. Let me know where you're watching from. Welcome everyone, I'm Ariel, this is Urbanist, and right now we are in front of the Royal Opera. The Royal Opera is just right outside the main historic center, which we're going to walk through, Gamla. Dates back all the way to the 1200s. We'll learn more about that. To show you, this was Gustav III right over here. Now, Gustav III was part of the very famous Volsa family. The Volsa family got world famous because of this guy, Gustav Adolphus. We'll talk about him in just a little bit. But another cool thing I found is that they actually found the clothes he wore that night at the masked ball. That was the clothes he was assassinated in. So Sweden was a very powerful empire, and here we see how it grew over time. It started off with Gustav Vasa. We'll learn about how he even rose to power in the first place. And then the Vasa family continued their reign for many, many decades into a few hundred years. This guy, Gustav Adolphus, was the most famous one because he ended up building a ship that was so damn big with so many cannons that ended up being tipped over and destroyed by a breeze. Only ended up going 1 nautical mile on its maiden voyage. That ship was fully recovered about 2 decades ago, and they made it into the Volsa Museum. Oh, Ron just mentioned there was an attempt on the life of the Prime Minister of Japan, Shinzo Abe. Very sad. I'm not sure if I'm not sure how he's doing or what happened. I haven't been keeping up with the news, but that's so sad to hear. I did not plan this story to be the same day this happened. Oh, Q&A says it was successful. That's terribly sad to hear. I did not plan to do this story because of those events. I just heard about those events just a few minutes ago. So sad that he passed. Everyone, give a round of hearts, your thoughts and prayers to him. By no means, I think he did. No one deserves that type of treatment, let alone that guy. He seemed to be a very decent, integrous person. So, very sad to have happened to a major political figure. So, my thoughts and prayers to that family of the former Prime Minister of Japan. I was actually going to talk about another assassination attempt, or actually not just the attempt, a successful assassination. So Gustav III wasn't the only Swedish king to be assassinated here. Let's go across the street over here. We'll go this way. Wendy says terrible, yes. Lincoln also loved the theater, too soon. Yeah, well, we also talked about Napoleon III in France. That was attempted to assassinate him in a theater, hence why he built the Palais Garnier. Hello, Ashley. Nice to see you here. Thank you so much for the 200 stars. I appreciate you. So here we're starting to see the governmental buildings of Stockholm. Stockholm, the power of Sweden is centralized in this area that we're going to walk around. We're going to walk around what is a set of a few islands. Stockholm is a series of different islands, lakes and rivers crisscrossing all each other. It's a bit hard to even get a sense of the geography being here. It's more complicated. If you think New York is complicated, Stockholm is way more complicated. Let me see if I can pop up a satellite image of Stockholm. Right here. So that's Stockholm. This is where we're walking. Hey, Miss Fancy says the sky is beautiful. Nice to see you here. Mark says pray for less violence. It is so sad, yeah. So I forgot to show, this is this guy over here is Gustav Volsa. If you were to pronounce him with more of an American accent, people would say Vasa, but it's Volsa. I love how Swedish sounds. It sounds so cool. It's kind of it sounds in a way that you don't expect it. Now, the ship that he ended up building is in the Volsa Museum, which, stay tuned, I will be making at least one short video on it, if not more. But that was the ship that only ended up going for 1 nautical mile. But this guy, nonetheless, is known as a military genius. He died at a very young age, unfortunately, at the age of 37. But nonetheless, he was known as a military genius because he ended up growing the Swedish Empire quite significantly. He's the only Swedish king to be known as the Great. So King Gustav II Adolphus the Great. Let's walk through here. Ron says 37 was actually middle-aged back then. You know, if you survive past an infant, generally people did live until old age. So sometimes there's a bit of a kind of a misconception that 37 was the middle of your life or later life. No, not really. The reason the average life expectancy was much lower was because of the infant mortality rate. So I mentioned the events were very sad. I was going to talk about this regardless before I even heard about the events in Japan today. February 28th, 1986. The Prime Minister of Sweden was a very powerful figure in the world at that time. He spoke often really against colonialism, against racism. When he was young in his 20s, he ended up doing a hitchhiking trip across the US and ended up finding terrible inequality and racism. And he wanted to fix that here in Sweden. So when he was elected Prime Minister in 1969, he actually ended up raising taxes to the highest of the world. It was the biggest tax increases that the world has ever seen in any country. Of course, he was what we would call a social democrat. He ended up taking ideas from the Soviet Union with communism, socialism, and all that jazz, and ideas from the West, democracy, representative democracy, and combining them together. And of course, free capitalism, and combining them together, kind of being the midpoint. This caused also a lot of enemies, especially with the world of business, and also with people who were either fans of the Soviet Union or fans of the West with the US. He met up with a lot of dignitaries that were often leaders that were bullied around by the major power, at least to his perspective, was bullied around by the major powers. He met up with people like Fidel Castro, Saddam Hussein, many others, which kind of shocked me. But nonetheless, he ended up making healthcare, education available to all Swedes. So the Swedish people loved him, and he stayed in power for nearly a decade and a half. But one night he decided to go off and to the movie theater with his wife Lisbeth in the center area of Stockholm. He didn't have security with him that night. Shortly, just right before midnight, walking away from the movie theater, a lone gunman shoots him. Lisbeth had very minor injuries. She survived. But Olaf did not. This caused a stir in Sweden because they haven't seen that since Gustav III. At that time, the Prime Minister always lived in his home, and security details weren't always that strong. But that changed afterwards. They end up making this the Prime Minister's home, the official one, where, of course, security can be maintained a little bit better. And we do see security. It's not that heavy as like in other countries, but yes, it is secure. Tomorrow says politicians should avoid theater. This is a running theme. Yeah, that is odd. This is a running theme. Our front of the Prime Minister's home. I look odd enough with the camera, but I think this guy is more odd, fishing in front of the Prime Minister's home. That's a bit weird. So Olof Palme, unfortunately, he was killed, and then after that, the Prime Minister started living right over here. So let me pop up an image of Olof. Right here. The thing is, they weren't unable to find out who was the assailant. There were a few theories. One, it was South African intelligence, because he actually supported what was called the African Congress that was going to end apartheid, which was the segregationist policies in South Africa. Apparently, some ex-South African intelligence officers admitted to doing the crime, but that was never founded to be true. The other theory was that it was Kurdistan Workers' Party, which was deemed a terrorist organization by Olof in the beginning, and of course other countries followed suit. They also couldn't find any specific ties. And then the third theory was this worker who worked close by the theater that he was visiting, who was actually very anti-social democrat. That was the more likely suspect. That man committed suicide 20 years ago, so they also couldn't verify if it was him. The case is closed because they believe that he was the primary suspect, but it's not 100% determined. So no one really knows who killed Olof. Now his commute, the current Prime Minister's commute is very short because he works right. Just a tiny little commute from there all the way over here. Hopefully, unlike back then, walking with security. Ron says the fisherman is a security agent. Yeah. No, thank you. I see too many spy movies to find a random fisherman in front of the Prime Minister's office. Sorry to laugh. It's very sad to hear what happened, but yeah, I find it very odd. Q&A says, plenty of cameras, your biometrics haven't set off any alerts. Oh yeah, I wonder, what do you know about biometrics? I don't know too much about it. Wendy says, what a view. Oh yes.
He's so cute.
Tomorrow says, you have hooked us on solving murder mysteries now. Oh yeah, after that experience in Copenhagen. Look at the gorgeous views. So here's a very old bridge that connects us to Gamla, which we're going to walk through right now. Mohammed says, is this near Gamla, the old town? It is, yeah. Sweden is great in the summer, says Daniel. It was raining torrentially earlier today. I was shocked to see how hard the rain was. Luckily, I ended up escaping it and being cozy indoors. Lorraine says, very interesting story. Oh, I'm so glad you think so, Lorraine. Hello, Kay. The city looks so clean. I mean, we are indeed in the governmental center, so it's not as clean as the other parts of the city, but still far cleaner than New York and many parts of the US, and of course, many other countries. Muhammad says, brings back old memories. Oh, Muhammad, I'm so glad. We have a lot of people. So Olof Palme, who was the prime minister that unfortunately was terribly taken too soon from our world. He also welcomed immigrants with open arms here in Sweden. Of course, he encouraged them to learn Swedish and to adopt Swedish customs, but he was one of the main reasons why immigrants come over here and end up eventually at least getting access to education and health care, which is not the case in other parts of the world. So now we're starting to see the Parliament building.
The reason I'm warning you is because there's 3 different cruisers in the city. 3 different cruiser companies, and there's a lot of cruisers. They're not as
So we're starting to see the Parliament building, which is it's open for the public, but you can't come in all the time. Crystal, thank you so much for the $10 super chat. Appreciate you. Wow, look at that. Beautiful building. Almost reminds me of Florence in terms of its architecture. So, Crystal, thank you so much for the $10 super chat. That's so kind of you. Thank you so much. Chris says, you seem so happy. Do you? Admittedly, I feel a bit uneasy walking around with the camera in these political areas. Not because of Sweden. Sweden seems to be pretty lax, like Denmark, in terms of governmental buildings, unlike France or certain parts of the U.S. But unfortunately, I think security is a bit high because of the assassination that happened in Japan. So that's why it feels a bit more on edge here in this area right now. Do I prefer Copenhagen or Sweden? I love Sweden. Sweden is really awesome. I like the hustle and bustle of Sweden. Copenhagen was amazing though. Copenhagen was serene. Sweden is fun. That's the difference, I would say. So I think I really enjoyed the serenity of Copenhagen. Mark says, Ariel with all the thought-provoking stories. I'm so glad you enjoy them. Kate says, do you feel like you're being watched? Not necessarily, but it does feel like there's more security than usual. Wendy asks, what did you have to eat today? I ate what was called a donburi. They're popular here. It's a rice bowl with some meat, Asian style. Poke bowl, so very popular here. All right, let's walk into the old town, shall we? Oh, look at that church. We'll catch more of a glimpse later. Eugene says, do you know any Sweden fun facts? I will tell you soon. Wow, gorgeous buildings. I'm not sure if that guy was doing a nice sign or not. Eugene says, do you know any Sweden fun facts? Stay tuned. So right here, we're here in the main thoroughfare of Gamla stan. So Gamla stan is the historic area of Sweden that was established in the 1200s when Stockholm was established back in 1252. Now Stockholm is relatively young for such a old country because, of course, people have been living here since the Stone Age. But even beyond that, we have the Vikings. However, why was Stockholm even established in the first place? Let me see if I can go to a place where I can pop up my map. Well, let me show you the aerial view of the places we're walking through right now. So Gamla stan right here, we're starting to see it right there. That's how it was depicted a few hundred years ago. This is probably around 1600s. Chris says, I love walking streets, no cars. Yes, there's no cars here, which is the great thing. So there's no cars here at all, which is amazing. Someone was waving away the camera. And here's another aerial view. Ia says, Stockholm has an ice bar. Oh, that's amazing. Peter says, go to a lot of rooms. Wow. That's amazing. Yeah, the Royal Palace is also open. I have passes to all these things, which is amazing. Emily says, lots of people out and about today. Oh yes, it's very vibrant here. It was emptier yesterday. Yesterday I walked through here, it was pretty empty. Here's a Swedish flag. Star says, great walking streets. Oh yes. Thanks for all the enjoyable streams this summer, says Bear in the Garden. My pleasure, Bear in the Garden. I'm so happy to be here. Susie says, no tacky fast food place. Susie, don't speak too soon. Do not speak too soon, Susie. Stay tuned. You'll see that this is not untouched by American capitalism. Not even the oldest part of Sweden. All right, let me pop up the map and show you why Stockholm is the reason, why it's here. Like, why did they even build this in the 1200s? Feng says, why was that guy wearing a jacket? It's a bit chilly. It's about 68 degrees Fahrenheit. With wind and shade, it starts getting a bit chilly. So I end up having a map. I end up getting another map from Portobello Road in London from the same guy. And this one's from 1794. And this is Scandinavia, Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. To understand why Stockholm is important, you understand why Scandinavia is the way it is. So here we have Scandinavia. Finland, for most of its history, has been the territory of the Russians or the territory of the Swedes / Scandinavians. But we started here in Denmark, all the way in Copenhagen, which is around this area, right over here. So Copenhagen, right there. And then we end up going all the way up to Stockholm. All the way up to Stockholm. The thing is, the original settlements of Sweden were centered around the coast here in the Baltic Sea. The problem with the Baltic Sea is that there was always pirates from the Baltic countries themselves, Poland, the Germans, the Hanseatic League, all these other powers kept attacking the coast. This was very bad news for the Swedes. So according to legend, one of the rulers of old Sweden ended up saying, hey, we gotta move out of here. So he ended up sending a log down one of the waterways with a bunch of gold and silver and treasure and saying, hey, where it lands is where we settle. So that log traveled through the waterways here in this area of Sweden and eventually landed upon this island, Gamla. And they settled here. That was the legend. And that is apparently the origin of the name Stockholm, though it's not known for sure. A lot of people believe home means little island and stock means logs or wood. So it's the little island of logs. And the reason for that was because they used logs as defensive structures that they put all around the island. So this island has always been well defended. The street we're walking through right now was actually one of the original walls for the city. So at this area, we're going to start walking through what is now landfill. But the other important thing about this map is the balance of power. I mentioned the Goose, the Volsa family before. The reason they even came into power was because they rebelled against another power. The country we just came from, Denmark. Denmark, for a very long time, during the Kalmar Union, more than 200 years, ended up ruling over Sweden. And then for more of the history of Scandinavia, Denmark ended up getting a lot of power over Sweden and also Norway. So it was a tiny little country getting power of a bunch of land. Similar to like Britain, for example, which end up pissing off the Swedes. But we'll learn more about that as we keep walking around. So let's take a detour and let's go towards the House of Nobles. Kate says it's 25 degrees Fahrenheit over there. Oh, how much is 25 degrees Fahrenheit Celsius? Do let me know. It sounds hot. Hey, soldier, nice to see you here. Welcome. Tamara says, thank you for all the maps you show us. Help us put things into context. Oh, yes, I'm so happy. I love finding those old maps. I wish I could buy a bunch of them. I only bought 2. So that's one of 2 that I bought. The Swedish Vikings were called Rus, says Peter Mattison. Love your adventure, says Alex. Dia says Bob just made a cameo. Indeed, there's a few pigeons, not that many here. Does Copenhagen have a rough neighborhood, says Ron. I did not see any rough neighborhoods in the entire city of Copenhagen. I think Stockholm has a few more rough neighborhoods. They should be in the outskirts of the city, the suburbs. That's what I've heard. I don't know yet. So let me know if you want to see a live video in one of the roughest neighborhoods in Stockholm. Here's the Supreme Court. And right next to it is the House of Nobles. Let's go. And all right, so it seems like I got myself a new souvenir. Should I take this home? Let me know. I think it can fit into my bag. It doesn't seem too big. Maybe I could fold it somehow. Using super strength. Star says, take the sign. Indeed. DS says, yes, take it. Hey, Jake says, do you like the music of First Aid Kit band? I've heard of them. I really do enjoy them. I don't know too much about them, but I have heard a few songs. Mr. Boss says, Swedish suburbs are real, rougher. Oh, interesting. Rosalba says, I like your sense of humor. I'm so glad you do, Rosalba. Ron says it's a sign. Yes. Oh my God, these lights take ages. highways run all around this area. So that's why there's more car traffic, even in a tiny little historic district. Ava says, Stockholm has no-go zones. What is the no-go zone of Stockholm? Do let us know. Just a random observation. Swedes are a bit more afraid of the camera than Danes. Danes, it was very easy. Let me know if anyone has noticed that, if you're from Sweden or you make content in Sweden. All right, here's the House of Nobel. Now Sweden still has a king, still a monarchy. The king really has no power whatsoever. But in front, we have a very important statue. This is the guy who ended up establishing the Swedish Empire. He's the father of the Swedish Empire, Gustav Vasa. Gustav Eriksson Vasa. I think his middle name is important because it ended up being the name of one of the bigger hardware companies for phones in the 20th century. Let me see if I can pop up an image of Gustav Vasa. I love his beard. Look at this guy. Look at that epic beard. He's the one who established the Volsa family dynasty. It lasted for a long time. And he says, please, you're not getting wet today. No, yeah. Teresa says he was a hairy man. He was indeed a hairy man. Hey, Emily says, us Swedes are a bit more stiff. We barely talk to each other. And someone else just said the same thing. Swedes can be a bit more reserved and private, says Mr. Bot. And Daniel says, yes, we're pretty shy. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, it feels very different here from Copenhagen. Very, very different. You know, I've had a few people like whisk away from the camera. Here's one of the artery roads running through the middle of Sweden. Stockholm. Daniel says it would take 50 years to grow a beard like Gustav Vasa. I'll be able to grow that beard. I feel you. I know a lot of people, it's hard to grow that beard for a lot of people. I could probably grow that length in maybe like three or 4 years. Though I won't have as big of a mustache as he did. So you can imagine that this was a great defensive area. It was moated, basically, surrounded by water. Hello, Lorraine. Welcome. In the US, we built the interstate highway system back in the 1950s. Interstate highway system was built mostly in order to provide the military with easy transport access between the entire country. Because during World War II, while it was General Dwight Eisenhower, he tried to go from one side of the country to the other, and he found out it was way too long. So they ended up crisscrossing the entire country with highways. That was mostly a good thing. It ended up connecting the country, it ended up making the country feel like one united country. Because the US is big. The US is as big as Europe. But Europe does not feel like one country because it's a bunch of other little countries. However, the downside of that interstate highway system is that they end up building highways through the middle of the cities. It destroyed a lot of downtowns and historic centers of major cities in the US. Now, when you think of the US, people think historic downtowns. What are you talking about? There's no history in the US. When you come to a city like Stockholm, Copenhagen, Paris, London, Edinburgh, all these cities have buildings from the 1800s. Same thing was with major American cities in the US. Atlanta, Boston, New York, Philadelphia, Baltimore. The list goes on, San Francisco, Seattle. That almost affected Europe. A lot of countries in Europe started building highways, and they wanted to build them right through the middle of the city. Stockholm was one of the very few ones to have been victim to that. I say victim, yes, and I mean it, because highways weren't necessary for the power of Amsterdam to grow. Amsterdam almost had highways running through it. Copenhagen almost had highways running through it. Helsinki as well. Edinburgh as well. But none of them, luckily, did not have highways running through it. Stockholm was one of the very few ones, along with Glasgow. So, ladies and gentlemen, yep, we have a highway running right through the heart of the city. So it reminds me a lot of America. Connie, thank you so much. It was 62 days that Eisenhower took to get from DC to SF. Yeah. It's the BQE in the middle of Stockholm. Yeah, it reminds me a lot of the BQE, Susie. So Susie is referring to the Brooklyn-Queens Expressway in New York City. Runs through the heart of Queens and Brooklyn. Also destroy a lot of historic areas of Queens and Brooklyn. Mika says the Swedes are in the countryside. Yeah, I'm not sure where people are here coming from. They're certainly not Americans. Certainly not Danes here. So I've heard Swedish here. There are Swedes hanging out here. I think there's domestic tourism in Sweden that come to Stockholm, especially during the summertime. It has to be the case. So this was a bridge that actually dates back many hundreds of years. This concrete version is from the 1950s, but there has been a bridge here for many hundreds of years, all the way to the Franciscan monks who established a monastery right here on this island. This was the original Black Friars Monastery, and then later became a gigantic church. It's no longer really running as a church. There hasn't been a parish here for a long time, but it is the main burial place of many of the famous kings of Sweden, including the Vasa family that we're talking about. Gustav Adolphus Vasa, buried here, or entombed here. So Gary says they were also set to do this in Edinburgh, passing a highway through it. Luckily someone stopped them with the red start button. Yep, Gary. Luckily, Edinburgh was saved from that. I say that Stockholm was a victim to the highways because, as we find out, Edinburgh, Copenhagen, Amsterdam, Helsinki are all major cities in Europe that have a whole lot of power, a whole lot of economic might, and they don't have highways running through the middle. So you don't need a highway in order to prosper. It's not necessary. Actually, it might hinder some prosperity and increase some crime too. All right, let me show you the church. Let me see if I can walk in. Lorraine, thank you so much for 1,000 stars. I appreciate that. Nick says very loud. Oh, yes. But even this is more orderly, says Susie. Oh, yes. It's more orderly in here in Stockholm, even the highway. So right now, this is the Riddarholmen Church. It's a museum, a royal burial church, and the Church of the Order of the Sephirin. It was built around the 1290s. The Franciscans were expelled in 1527 as the country was reforming, becoming Protestant, and King Gustav Vasa and his sons intentionally chose other burial churches. But the church was restored at the end of the 16th century. And then the Ridderholmen Church again became a royal burial church with the funeral of Gustav II Adolf, who we talked about earlier, 1634. Since then, all the monarchs until Gustav V were buried here, except Queen Christina. During the 17th century, generals and nobility also built mortuary chapels at the church. All right, everyone. No politics in the comments. We have people going off in the comments talking about the rough neighborhoods of Stockholm. Everyone has a different interpretation of rough, and rough does not necessarily mean that it's a bad place. Everyone's bad. It just means that it's a bit rougher, and that's okay. And it is a reality that as a tourist, there are neighborhoods that generally tourists won't go to. A, because there's not that many landmarks, and B, because why be cautious about your safety? So, yes, no more discussion about that. But thank you, Ava, for letting me know what are the places that are considered rough in Stockholm. I appreciate that. All right, let's see if we can walk in. I gotta get out my golden key. Does it include Rotherham? It's supposed to be, yes, it supposed to, I think. Yeah, let's see. Got the silver key to the city. Thank you, Visit Stockholm, for all the free admission to places. I have the pass. Okay, thank you so much. Wow. Wendy says no stained glass. Yeah, the reason for that it's because it's Protestant Lutheran. No stained glasses in Lutheran churches. At least not all of them. Some of them sometimes do stained glass, as we saw in Copenhagen with one of the churches. Gary says is the silver key I have. You get a free jail card new. Interesting. Wow, beautiful. Damn, I got some hard to take away smudges. I hope that's not the dust inside the lens. whose family crest they are. Yeah. Different families. All of royalty. Sweden, one of few places in the world with nobility. They have no power whatsoever, though. It's only symbolic nowadays. This more functions as a tomb, not so much a church nowadays. So right here we have Gustav Adolphus, the guy that we saw the statue of in the beginning right here. He was infamous for building the Volsa ship. I mentioned it was a terrible flub on behalf of the Swedish Navy, but he's famous for being one of the best military geniuses that the world has seen, because he built the Swedish Empire during his very short reign. Died only at 37. Wow, these are sharp. These churches in Scandinavia are so well preserved. This is the 1200s. Wow. those people, yeah, there's people entombed here. It's a burial place. It's a big tomb. Like Roskilde, which we went to in Copenhagen, similar. Here are several nobles, men of nobility buried here. Wow. No, that wasn't my converses, that was the door. It's squeaking back and forth. Alright, let's continue walking around. Let's go back into the old town. That was Riddarholm. Oh, that's so hard to pronounce some of these Swedish words. Riddarholmen. I just got to think of words in the Swedish accent. There we go. There we go. I gotta think in the Swedish accent. And then those words will come easier to me. Renee says, riddle me this. Yes, indeed. That was spooky. It did feel spooky to me in person. Maybe it looks like because on camera it's a bit dark, but it didn't feel too spooky. It felt nice energy. There's big money. There's big money wandering around waiting to hear from ghosts, says David. What were you referring to? Ava says, I love your Swedish accent. It's a work in progress. But I love how like sing-songy it is. It's a very interesting accent. I love it. It's a very nice accent. No wonder, I mean this with love. No wonder it has been stereotyped in America with the likes of the Swedish Chef. When people make impressions of the band ABBA and what's another famous Swede? There's a few other famous Swedes that people like stereotype in America, and also the Minnesota accent, which is derived from the Swedish accent. So no wonder it's just charming. It's charming. It's very interesting. Renee says, yeah, you betcha. Indeed. Peter Matheson says, Bjorn Borg. Ooh, who's Bjorn Borg? You let me know. Sounds very familiar. Bjorn Borg. DS says, I haven't seen any homeless people in Scandinavia thus far. There are very few, both in Copenhagen and in Stockholm. The only homeless people I've seen are near the train station. I have not seen homeless people in the historic center. Unlike in the US, where the majority of the homeless population hangs out in the most valuable landmark areas of American cities. Teresa says, you can tell you're in a different country. Oh, yes. Jack says, I love the Swedish language. It does sound very nice. Tamo says, that's more Scottish. No, Scottish. There's a little bit more roughness with Scottish. Yeah. Renee says, the only nice Borgs are on Star Trek. I wouldn't consider them nice, necessarily. ABX Girl says, Sweden takes care of its citizens, especially with affordable housing. And DS says, why do you think there's a little homelessness? Exactly what ABX Girl just said. There's a lot of affordable housing. And yeah, you're not going to really be left out of a house. And if you're not from here and you haven't kind of naturalized as a citizen, I assume you'll be kicked out. So I think that might be the reason. There's a lot more social programs here. So people who might be going through ailments that in other countries like the US would lead them to homelessness, such as alcoholism, here treatment for those are paid for. So if you have mental ailments, alcoholism, drug abuse, many other things can lead to one being homeless in the US. Those treatments and facilities are paid for here. So people are taken care of in those regards, which is not the case, unfortunately, in the US. US does a better job than many other parts of the world, but compared to Scandinavia, Scandinavia is doing an excellent job in that regard. So yeah, that's why I think you see a lot less homeless and almost no mentally ill people who are not equipped to really be walking around in the major city. You don't see too many in really bumped into any. During my entire week in Copenhagen, I only bumped into one drunkard who was asking me for money. That's it. One time. 1 week, only encountered one odd person. That was it. Which is a rarity in the US. The US is a bit more frequent. That's not to say that we should not be grateful for what the US provides. The US has many great things it does provide. You're hearing squeaking, says Rod. That's odd. Okay, let me know if it sounds better now. I think Chris, that's so beautiful. Thank you, Ariel, for this trip. I love the calm streets. My pleasure. I'm so glad you're enjoying this trip. Let's get back to the main street. Oh. Ooh, a bookstore. Cool. I have a cool book to show you about this area. I'll pop it out soon. And a new building. Interesting. This is almost all historic, but I think this is one of the few exceptions. Or significantly remodeled. So it's not entirely new. But this seems to not be that old either. It seems to be 1900s. A lot of buildings here we're seeing are from the 1600s. There's a few exceptions, which we'll see walking around. Ooh, here's the main street with some bars. This is cool. Tony, thank you so much for 100 stars. I appreciate you. Wow. MZ says, Ariel, you're making me miss Europe. I love this. Oh, MZ, I hope you get to visit Europe once again. Such a beautiful country. Here we have an Irish pub. It won't be a city without an Irish pub. So this is Kilkenny. And look, we have NYC pizza. Look at that. NYC pizza. Very empty. Seems like no one's here. It's 58. Okay, it's not that bad. It's about like $7 for a slice of NYC pizza. That sounds hella expensive. Goose Alley Pizza Kiosk. All right, let's try it out. There's music being played, but let's try it out. I'm curious about this pizza. All right, I'm gonna play some music. Be right back. Okay, sorry, the music went off for some reason. But ladies and gentlemen, this looks like legit pizza. Look at this. Wow. This guy's running it alone. It seems to be a franchise of a few other people. Two other stores that run in the Stockholm area. He's not the first. It seems like there's an owner, but he's the one running it. He's doing it his own recipe. And he says that he's a fan of New York style. There's only one other one that he would recommend in Stockholm called Otto, New York. But look at this. This seems legit. I love the fluffiness of the bread. Of course, the pizza was sitting there for a while, but that's what you get with New York style. That's expected. And he added a little bit extra cheese. He's kind of putting a little New Jersey touch to it. Oh, that's so interesting. Wow, this is cool. I did not expect this. The place is also so empty, so I thought it was going to be a really shitty place. I told them that most New York style pizza in Europe is 7-Eleven taste. And Peter says Old Town is a tourist trap. It is. So this is an expensive slice. I spend 100 krona in this. So $10 for sparkling water from Vici and a slice of pizza. About 5, 6, and 4. Wow, super fluffy bread. Someone left a super chat. They had like 3 other slices. They had one with pepperoni, and they had one with like a vodka sauce or something like that, which is interesting. Ava says a contribution for the pizza. Glad for another day in Stockholm. Oh, Ava, thank you so much. Ava, let me know. Are you your last name does appear to be Scandinavian? Do remind me. Or are you South American? I couldn't quite tell, but it seems like you love Stockholm nonetheless. Thank you so much. All right. Wow. Tunisia says ranch dressing? No, I'm not putting ranch dressing on this. Not people from New York. It tends to be Long Islanders and New Jerseyans that put ranch dressing on their pizza. I don't think this guy had ranch dressing. But wow, this is really good. I love this. You can't really fold the pizza too much like New York style. So it's interesting because he seems to be a bit inspired by Neapolitan style because the crust is very fluffy. It's fluffier than your typical New York crust, so it's a bit hard to fully fold. And I just had a little bit of grease fall on me. So it is definitely New York style with the grease dripping. That's good. Wow, I feel like I'm back in New York with a little bit of nice touch with that fluffy crust. I like it. This is a really good pizza. I mean, yes, it's pricey. We are in the middle of the historic center, but wow. So fluffy, the bread. Wow. Almost feels like it's not super thin New York style. It reminds me of great pizzas outside of New York that do New York style, but they're like outside of the city. Yeah, it reminds me of that. It's very fluffy. Almost like if you had like Detroit style bread on a New York style size pizza. Great pizza, everyone. Visit Goose Alley. Highly recommend it. I am blown away. I did not think this would be good. Europe does not do too good New York style in general. It is rare to find the New York style. This place is empty. It seems like almost no one knows about it. It seems like Swedes probably don't even care about New York style at the moment. And we are in a touristy area, and it's about to rain, but try it out. It seems like this place is way underrated. Way underrated. Q&A says, I know it's not a bench, but can we get a rating? That rating, I'll leave it to the domain of David Portnoy. So if anyone could hit up David Portnoy, tell him to come here to Stockholm and try this pizza. I think he would give this a good score. If I were on David Portnoy's show, let's see. This is a really good interpretation of New York City pizza. I would give this, if I were on this show, a guest. 8.4. 8.4. This is a good pizza. This is an excellent pizza, actually. 8.4. It's not saucy. No, it's not saucy. Someone just mentioned it has a little sauce. Yeah, it is very little in the sauce department. But I think it's still well balanced. I never had New York style pizza, says Veronique. Try it out if you can. Of course, the best place is to try it out in New York. Tunisia says, what time is it here? Right now it's about 4:17, 4:20. It's about 4:20 p.m. Just in time for pizza. Will there be another stream tonight, says Johnny. No, this is the only stream of the day. I'm on a strict schedule. No other streams ever again. Schedule. Put on your notifications. I don't even know they had New York style pizza, but it looks good. Says Roberto, I never had New York style pizza. Yeah, so if you haven't been to New York, probably not too familiar with it. Fast food joints emulate New York style. Not too well. 7-Eleven, Domino's, not too well. So New York style is pretty unique, but it is common in America, of course, Canada, and you'll find in other parts, like even Puerto Rico, you'll find New York style. I don't think it's common in Europe. So the pizza wasn't $10. The pizza was around $6, $7, and the water is about $3 to $4. So yeah, it is an expensive slice. Very expensive slice. Eva says, it's funny, Ariel, your slice also looks like fluffy Indian bread. It does. It does kind of look like naan. Yeah. You're so right, Eva. The bread is so unique. It's like halfway between New York style and Napoli style. Peter says 100 krona, no Swede would buy that. You guys are missing out. I mean, it might be expensive, but wow, if you don't have access to New York, I don't think you're gonna have too many choices. Sorry to break it to you, Peter. I think unfortunately, Sweden is lacking choices in New York style pizza. So, novelty to at least try once if you're a Swede, despite the price. So wow, that was excellent. Try Goose Alley. Let's continue walking around. Someone asked me the difference between between Copenhagen coffee and Stockholm coffee. Copenhagen coffee was really good. You buy and you get a cup, and that's it. Stockholm is the land of infinite coffee. You buy a cup, and you can have as much as you want. Drip coffee, that is. So, if you're used to drinking espresso drinks like I am, probably switch to drip here. Why? A, you're going to spend less money, because drip is going to be less expensive, and you get more coffee for your buck. So it is awesome to have unlimited coffee. It is a very cool cultural aspect of Sweden that I like. Let's continue walking around. But first I gotta compliment this guy. He did an amazing job. Okay, so that was the guy. He was very nice, and yeah, very good pizza maker. And he has the original New York steel ovens that you see all around New York City. The best slice shops have those ovens. It's not the big wood fire ovens. Those are for the restaurants to sit down. Jack says he didn't look Italian. He's making New York style. He's now making Italian style. You don't need to be of the country to make the food. Especially in New York style. It's made by people from all around the world. So here's the prices for coffee and tea. Q&A says, how are the stamp prices? I am afraid to even ask. I'll look into it. The postcard prices are a bit more reasonable, but I'm afraid to ask about the stamp prices. I gotta check it out. So the reason I'm even being asked about stamp prices is because in Denmark, to send an international postcard was $5 and about 50 cents. The most expensive I've ever spent on a postcard. Before that, the most expensive I spent was like $2.25 around there in Italy. Gary says most men are wearing trousers. Where are yours? You're referring to shorts? Yeah, a lot of Scandinavians wear shorts even in 60-degree weather. I'm not used to it. Let's walk. In this building right here, many hundreds of years ago, back in the 1600s when they built most of this neighborhood, someone was looking for some building material, or at least that is the likely story. And they went off to the forests of Stockholm and took whatever they could. So they ended up taking a runic stone made by the people who predate our modern day Stockholm or modern day Sweden. These people were around at least the 1100s, maybe even before. And this was the ancient runic language. That was derived from the Roman language. So we see FR right here. And it's because the message says, Torsten and Frugen dedicate this to their son. The son's name is not written here, has been cut off. But 300 years ago, they sawed off a cannon in order to protect this from incoming horse carriages from endangering this runic stone even further. So, yep, we're touching a real runic stone. Look at that. Wendy says, this is on your TikTok. Yes, it is. It depicts a serpent. Chris says nice reuse of cannons as well. This we saw a few examples or passed by a few examples in Paris. And there's a few other cities in Europe that do this as well. They use cannons as guard protectors for the corners of buildings. Yvette says, awesome piece of information. Oh, yes. So this is Prastgatan. Prastgatan is the priest way, the priest street. And it's a very narrow little street over here. Look at that. Wow. So restaurant recommendation here. This place is really good. It's called Crip Inn. If you want to have traditional Swedish cuisine, try Crip Inn. Prastgatan. I'll pop up the food I had yesterday. I'll be posting a video of it soon. But my first course was a herring with sour cream, egg, browned butter, tons of dill, and potato. And it was an acquired taste. Every single bite got better. Towards the end, I enjoyed it. I could see why they were well fed throughout the winters here in Sweden. And then for my main course, I ended up having, this is amazing food here in Scandinavia. The further north you go, the more you'll find this. Ladies and gentlemen, I had reindeer with amazing berries, super sweet berries, just an explosion of flavor. Mashed potatoes that were just delicious, one of the better mashed potatoes I've had, and pickles. And of course more dill. I don't know why people are obsessed with dill here. I like my dill, but there's dill everywhere. And David says, you're in the mirror perfectly. Indeed I am. Nothing is a coincidence. So it opens up soon, 5 p.m. And there's a little cat. Kay says, poor reindeer. Santa has like 11 more left. Tammany says it's a big deal here in Sweden. There's dill everywhere. I mean, like, every food just has dill. Dill on my breakfast, dill on my lunch, dill on my coffee, dill on my pastries, dill in my dinner, dill on my dessert, dill on my cocktails. Dill, dill, dill. Sometimes I just want to tell the Scandinavians, hey, just nil on the dill, please. Just chill on the dill, okay? John says dill in the New York City pizza. Luckily, that was dill-less. M4 Daz says we need more dill in our lives. In the US, yes, we could use a little bit more dill, but here they've taken it to the absolute extreme. Sometimes I find more dill than the rest of the food. Wendy's saying it's getting narrow. Oh yes, narrow walkways here. Here we have one of the churches. So one of the few places you can see gargoyles is here, or gargoyles in Sweden is here, Gamla stan. John says dill is the main course, food is the condiment. It feels like that. Wow. Chris says I'll have a side of salmon with my dill. Yeah, indeed. This should be the tallest structure in Gamla stan, the island we're at right now. So I think this translates into the Dutch church. I mean, not the Dutch, the German church, Deutsch. For whom does the bell toll? Now the reason this is the Dutch church of Gamla stan, or it used to be, is because we're entering the Dutch quarter of the old town. I mean, sorry, not the Dutch, sorry, the German. Deutsch, it could easily be confused for Dutch. We're entering the German quarter of the old town. The Germans were among the biggest traders with the Swedes. It was the Hanseatic League. They were both rivals when they were part of the Carmel Union with Denmark, and then later became friends and big trade partners. So a lot of Germans moved over here, set up businesses over here, and also influenced their architecture. So when walking around this part of Gamla stan, we're going to see German architecture, North German architecture. Bella says, so butter in Copenhagen, dill in Sweden. Got it. Basically, that's the gist. Yeah, that's the gist of the overused ingredient in each respective city. Diaz says, what's Sweden's #1 import? Well, I don't know what the import is, but I do have the list of the exports. Booyah, right here, everyone. These are the total exports of Sweden right now. We can see that cars are by far the biggest one, right here. Alex says, sup bro from Puerto Rico. Oh, bienvenidos. Qué bien que está viendo de Puerto Rico. La isla de encanto. So we got cars, 7%, SAB being one of the companies. Was it Volvo, the other one? We got vehicle parts, medicaments, which I assume is medicine. Refined petroleum. Ooh, interesting. Powering the nuclear powers of the world. Sawn wood is almost 2%, right down there. Look at that. Broadcasting equipment. What? What company is that? Is that Ericsson? ABBA is on the bottom left, says Q&A. Probably. ABBA is a huge export of the country. Chris says Volvos are made in China right now, but I assume Sweden still has the business. It's not a Chinese-owned business. Sami says, do you research these for all these cities? Yeah, I do. I do indeed. So we were at the opera earlier, and look at some old cars. I wonder if any of these are Swedish makers. I mean, yeah, Swedish makers. Ava says, as a teacher, I use the app Kahoot to create game questions to my students. And guess what? It's a Swedish company. Yeah, Sweden is now becoming a very big startup center as well. Stockholm specifically, trying to attract a lot of startup investment. H&M says, Peter is one of the companies. Yes, H&M is a gigantic multi-billion-dollar company. Zara is one of the most expensive, one of the more valued companies in fashion. Let's continue walking on the Priest Way. Peter says Spotify. Oh yeah, Spotify too. Kay says, did I just see a TGI Friday? Yep, TGI Friday is here. There's also a few other American fast food places here as well. In this historic center of Stockholm, yep, there's TGI Fridays. Tunisia says, Spotify is Swedish? Yes, it is. Skype too, says Peter, yep. So here we have an interesting picture of the architecture here in Gamla. These iron rods, Sweden was a big iron producer. It led them to become an empire that it was for a few hundred years. And these iron rods were meant to help to prevent the floors from bending and from the building from collapsing. cool thing is that throughout the eras, they end up building these rods in different shapes. Alex says, you need to visit the island someday. Great videos you make. Oh, thank you so much, Alex. Puerto Rico. Yeah, I visited Puerto Rico before. But I can't wait to return and do more videos. I visited Puerto Rico before to do videos, but I visited a lot in my personal life. So there's one hack to learn what era these were built in, these iron rods. Does anyone know the hack? Let me know in the comments. Let's see, this one kind of looks like a rope. This one kind of looks like scissors. What is the hack to know what era these were built? David says there's something like that in old buildings in the U.S. Yeah, they are. They have a different ornamentation though. Doesn't look like iron rods. Or they do, but just they're different. So the way to tell what era these were built is by looking up here and seeing if they actually tell the date in the iron rods that they made them with. So sometimes the iron rods would straight tell you what date they are, 1630. Don't have to do too much guesswork. And this area used to be the horse stables in the German Quarter. But there is no way of telling except one way. The one way you can tell that this used to be the stables quarter is right here, the statue. David says, I wouldn't have thought that was that old. Yeah, these buildings are mostly 1600s. Okay, so if you ate a lot of pizza, there might be a little bit of trickiness to get through this street. Because right here, we're met with the narrowest street in all of Stockholm. About 1 meter wide. This is Martin Trozigs Grand. Martin Trozigs Grand. Say that 10 times over, if you're not Swedish. More iron rods, yeah, right here. Okay, watch out, the stones do get slippery when wet. And here we are from the thinnest, the narrowest alleyway to Burger King. Wendy says, are you okay? I am okay. Luckily, it was so narrow that I was able to hold on to each side of the wall. But yes, stones are very slippery when wet. It seems like that gets no sun, so they were still very wet from earlier today. There was torrential rain earlier in the day here in Stockholm, so they were very slippery. So ladies and gentlemen, here we have a Burger King. Look at that. Usually you see McDonald's. I'm shocked to see a Burger King. But right in front of the Burger King is one of the oldest cafes still running in Europe. This one is Sundberg's Conditori. Sundberg's Conditori. Opened up in 1785. Still running. Conditori is like a place, a cafe. So the original Swedish fika back in the 1700s. See people enjoying some carrot cake and coffee. And this is called the Iron Square. It has a Swedish name. But the reason it's called the Iron Square is because there's a huge piece of iron right in the middle. This is a huge, like, pump, water pump. Tom says, I've been to Gamla stan, lovely part of Stockholm. Oh, yes. Molly says, the Burger King used to be a shop that sold musical instruments. Oh, really? Oh, that's cool. That's great to hear. Susie says, have we got time for coffee? This one's more of a sit-down place, so not right now. Here we have Everett Taube. Not sure who he is. Seems to be a famous musician or composer. Wendy says, can we eat cake? Not at the moment, it's a bit too full. How's this compared to the Plaka in Greece, says Ron. The Plaka in Greece... Plaka in Greece is older, much older than this. It also has history dating back to ancient Greek times. Beyond that, I would say they're kind of similar, but the Plaka is more elevated, so there's more terrain change. Here, there's not too much terrain change. Ida says, why did I know about this hidden lively beauty of this town? So Avalon, thank you so much. Conditori means fine bakery. Thank you, fine bakery. This smells good. So apparently this is the oldest continuously running restaurant in all Sweden with the same architecture. It's not open to the public because it's part of a clubhouse. I wish I can go inside. Susie says there's no Chinatown in Stockholm. Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah. Yeah, there's Chinatowns in a lot of cities, but yeah, Stockholm, I don't think there is one. Chris says that place deserves a bench test. It does indeed, yeah.
I'm not complaining. I just find it funny. Like, especially for example,
Jack says, have I been to Sodermalm? No, what's Sodermalm? Do let me know. Now this also feels a little bit like Florence to me, a little bit like Venice as well. Mr. Bot, thank you so much for the 100 Norwegian krona. That's so kind of you. Do let me know what's the conversion. But that's so kind of you. Thank you so much. 100 Norwegian krona from Mr. Bot. Ah, one of the pumps are working still. That's cool. Ooh, now it's getting hot. $10, says Peter. Oh, thank you so much, Mr. Bot. Appreciate that. David says, do you have to convert money or can you just pay by credit card? So here, generally when you pay by credit card, it won't ask you for a conversion. You just pay and your bank or credit card company will convert it for you. I pay everything via a debit card, which is works as a credit card. And that way I can just pay, boom, the bank does a conversion for me. I would recommend doing it that way. Some countries in Europe will ask you if you want to pay in US dollars or the local currency. It might be the euro or the pound. In that case, I would always recommend choosing the local currency because the system that they're using to process payments will charge you more usually than your bank. So don't use US dollars when you're paying in any given location. I will always recommend paying the local currency with your credit card so you can save yourself money. Always check the fees with your credit card, and sometimes you can even discount those fees, or sometimes you can even you can get a return on those fees. Some companies offer that, so check your personal policies. But yeah, I always pay from the local currency. Always, always, always. Here they don't even ask you. Some other countries they do. Look at this old Ian Fleming book. This is an old, rare bookstore. We have a fox in that. Oh, they have some old postcards. Oh, I'm coming back here. That's awesome. And here we have a Swedish Bakery. Look at that. Yeah, Sweden is mostly cashless. I have not found a reason to use card. It seems like it's not even necessary at all. This is one of the other popular fika places. This is a restaurant that has a Swedish name, but the Swedish name translates into under the chestnut tree. It's not just being poetic, it's literally under a chestnut tree. Looks very nice. I would definitely have fika there. So right through here is a really cool little secret. It's one of the alleyways here in Gamla. And here is what's called the Rose Portal. No, it's not an interdimensional portal that leads you to a realm filled with heavenly roses. No, it's a door built amongst a rose-colored building. But this door is the oldest one in all of Stockholm. Or I think this is the oldest door in at least in Gamla. Wow. Michelle, great question. I don't know exactly the age of the door. I think it's late 1500s, if anyone can check. But I think it's late 1500s. So it's older than a lot of the other buildings here. So it's very, very old for Stockholm standards. Look at that. Wow. Robert says it's the door to Valhalla. Yeah, basically. Copy from the houses. So about 2,000 people live on this island. It's mostly residential. 1580 says Chris. Thank you so much. 1580s, ladies and gentlemen. Late 1500s. Roberto says it will lead to a land of dill. How do you open up with no doorknobs? That's Susie. You push it. Old school. So.
Oh yeah, that's where the Yep.
Cool postcards.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay, see?
You would think they'd have a Maryland store on the other side of the street. Yep. Actually, that's the place that brought something from Virginia.
I kind of miss Copenhagen because while walking around, I'm not showing it of course, but while walking around, people would smile to see me film. Here, no, I'm getting looks like people are annoyed I'm filming. Very different from Copenhagen. Very different from Helsinki. Helsinki people don't care at all. So if I see a little bit stiff, it's because I'm not feeling very comfortable filming at the moment in Stockholm. I'm getting so many looks of annoyment, which is not so common. I've encountered that since Madrid. Madrid was the last place I've really encountered that a lot. Wendy says I'm smiling. Thank you so much, Wendy. I appreciate that. So here is a statue of St. George killing the dragon. Susie says we're all smiling. That's great. Teresa says you're surrounded by stuck-up tourists. I'm not sure where. There's a lot of Swedes here, so it's Swedes because Swedish people actually live here. So this is St. George killing the dragon. Very famous image we see all around the Christian world. But this one was built after the Swedes end up defeating Denmark in a major battle. So the Swedes and Danish have had a very long history of rivalry throughout the centuries. Of course, the dragon is Denmark, and St. George, of course, is Sweden. Now, this is a bronze replica. The original is wood, and it's in one of the nearby museums. Ron says, does it feel like Madrid? In terms of filming around, a little bit. Madrid was a bit worse. Imagine if we were to do that in America, make a symbolic statue of us defeating like the Germans. We never done that. I'm not sure why. We could have done the American version of that. What's a good American equivalent of a mythological battle? Let me know. What do you recommend? Or it can even be like superheroes. Like, what if we made a statue of Superman destroying Lex Luthor? Well, he wouldn't destroy Lex Luthor. Imagine if we have a statue of Superman arresting Lex Luthor. Kryptonite fell down on the ground. Luckily, he got him down. And that was a metaphor for Americans being Superman, defeating the Germans being Lex Luthor. I think that would be cool. Yeah, I think we should do that. We should do our own American mythological version of this statue. Ron says, how's the diversity in Sweden? Sweden is about about a quarter of the country is from somewhere else, was born from somewhere else. So it is a very, very diverse place, especially in Stockholm. I think Stockholm is more obvious, and maybe other cities like Malmo. All right, so let's continue walking around. Let's go back this way. Oh, look at the reindeer I had yesterday. Beautiful. Tony says, Tony Johansson, hey Tony, thank you so much for doing it. Tony says, my sincere apologies for my grumpy countrymen. No worries, Tony. It takes a little bit getting used to. It's every new country presents a different challenge when it comes to filmmaking in public. Store. So apparently Sweden is one of the biggest consumers of candies in the world. I'm not a big fan of candy, but this is the first candy store I've seen since 1860 called Virginia. It's interesting because actually in Virginia, US, the state has the oldest longest continuously running candy store as far as I know in America. Susie says, buy a Christmas decoration. I'm very tempted. Those were very nice crafts. Dia says any video of the reindeer meal. I'll be posting it later tonight. And TikTok Ariel Vera. We'll see you there. So it's a little hidden courtyard. So right here we have the tiniest monument in all of Sweden. After we have these people pass, I'll show it to you. But here we're on the backside of the Finnish Church. So the Finns still make up the second largest immigrant group after, I think it was Irani or Iraqi, one of those two. They are number one, and Finns are still number two. Finns have always been a big part of Sweden, so here we have the old Finnish church. Gary says, imagine that alley in Athens, it would be wall-to-wall graffiti. Yep, basically. Yeah, Athens is a very different culture. Beautiful little garden area. Look at that. Dia says, what draws Iranis here? There's a lot of benefits for living in Sweden. There's so many benefits. I'm just waiting for the other group to leave so I can show you the little monument. Grateful for these lives, says Ida, very much. Oh, I'm so glad, Ida. Thank you so much. I'm so glad you enjoy these lives. Jay Fox says bench test. It's wet. It's a wet bench. Yeah, wet bench. Let's try it out though. All right, I'm not as optimistic as the Danish benches. In Denmark, they had a little bend over here, so there's no bend over here. So I ain't gonna rank as high as the Danes. But they do have this nice little backside. It has a nice curve, that's good. And yeah, good hand rests. Beautiful little area here, very quiet. You can be here on your own, relaxing. And there's a tiny little monument there, which we'll see soon. Everyone's paying their respects to the little monument. I would give this a very good, it's a nice bench. But it's not inspiring me too much. I think Denmark has spoiled me for benches. I'll give this a good 6.5 out of 10. All right, let's check out the Iron Boy. The tiniest monument, the Iron Boy. It was originally built in 1919, but it was placed here in 1967 by Lis Eriksson. And people during the wintertime knit clothes for this little Iron Boy. And we see people leaving candies, coins. So here, Swedish coins do exist in this cashless society. Beautiful. DS says someone left free money there. Cool. Susu says he's small. Yeah, he's tiny. Dia says, wait, Sweden is cashless. It is not fully, not by mandate necessarily, but basically everywhere you go, you don't need to spend any money here in Sweden. So I have not need card for anything. Coffee shops, corner stores, even the churches with the little candles, they have a way to pay mobilely. So yeah, basically everything. Here's the front of the Finnish Church. What's the story behind the Iron Boy? I don't think there's really that much of a story. I couldn't find one. If anyone does, do let us know. Do you hear loud music here anytime? There are areas with more clubs, so I think there's a pretty big clubbing culture here in Stockholm. So I've heard loud music in the night a few times. Tony says, I'm really loving this European tour. Oh, I'm so glad you are, Tony. Thank you so much for tuning in. So this is one of the kings of Sweden. But he had a very weird backstory. This was King Carl the 14th Johan. Peter says Royal Castle to the left. Yes, the Royal Castle is here. So this is the Royal Castle as well. The royalty has not lived here since the 1980s. But yeah, Sweden does have a king. I'll pop up photo of him right over here. Let's see, right here. There we go. There's the king. So this guy was Admiral John Baptiste. Admiral John Baptiste, of course, was French. And this was during the Napoleonic Wars. Sweden had a crisis of secession. There was no one to take the next kingship. So there was a wide opening. This guy ended up making a deal saying, hey, I'll take over Sweden if I win the battles, I also get Norway. He ended up winning, and Sweden became united with Norway, and Norway was part of Sweden for nearly 100 years due to this guy, all the way until the early 1900s. Teresa says, the sculpture is said to bring good luck to anyone who caresses the boy's head and offers a small gift to him. Both are done frequently, as you can see. It's going to be a little bit hard to get up to the head of this guy. Oh, you're talking about the little iron boy. All right, I see. I understand. So here's an obelisk built here in Sweden, not from Egypt, unlike many other obelisks in London, Rome, in Paris.
To the Andes, okay.
Sharon says, is there a Greta Garbo museum? When I read that, Sharon, I thought you were asking, is there a Greta Gutenberg? I forgot her last name. Gutenberg? Greta Garbo. You know, I think she's honored somewhere. I'm not sure where. I'm not sure. I don't think there's a museum, but I think she's honored in some of the museums, in one of the museums. Oh, this was built in honor of Gustav III, the guy we talked about in the beginning, and Gustav Adolf as well. Is it a modern obelisk, says Ida? No, this was built in, I'm not sure exactly when, but it seems to have been built around the 1800s, 1700s. Peter says, Greta Thunberg. Oh, thank you so much. And here's the Stockholm Cathedral. Fortunately, it's under repair. And let's walk through the Royal Palace, shall we? The Royal Palace is open. That's interesting. Ida says, thanks for the date, Ariel. My pleasure, Ida. Let's walk through the Royal Palace. There was a few YouTubers that do more specific history tales about Sweden, which is really cool. So Chris says Iron Boy makes the Little Mermaid statue look huge. Yeah. And there's a changing of the guard here. Not every day, but a few days a week, especially in the summertime. Here are the cannons. Yeah, this is the Royal Palace, ladies and gentlemen. There has been a palace here since about the 1300s. It was originally called the Three Crown Palace. But then it burned down a few hundred years later, and this one was built. And we see, oh, interesting. This is interesting. Columns. This is beyond Corinthian. These columns are women in rapture. That's so interesting. Mika says there is a Greta Garbo museum. Oh wow, in the south of Sweden, in Hogsby. Oh, interesting. Alexander says, can I go inside? They probably don't allow too much video inside, though I may make an attempt to see if I can film with just my phone, maybe. If I can, then you'll see a short video on it. If I can't, then you won't see anything. If I can film a little bit more freely, then patrons will see something. So that's the benefit of being a patron, patreon.com/urbanist, or a supporter on Facebook, or a member on YouTube, pressing that join button. There are places where it's a lot harder to film with a gimbal, or there's no live video service, or it's just inappropriate to really do a live. And then I do those available to patrons. So for example, patrons have recently gotten access to a full tour of the Museum of Paris History, which is really awesome in the Marais district. And more videos are coming soon. But let's go into this church. I think the church is open. That's cool. I'm hot though. I gotta remove my jacket. Removing the church. Bear with me. Hi, I'm the Stockholm Key of Honor.
I am.
It's supposed to include free admission.
Yeah. I have not seen it before, so that's.
Oh, okay, yeah.
yeah.
So I could just walk in? You want to see? Yeah,
check.
sure, go for it. Bye.
It's not on the list, but I'll let you.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Perfect. Kay says, is this not on the list for the places listed? I did not check ahead of time. I just assumed it was. I think it is. I think she just didn't spot it because it's pretty tiny handwriting. What is this place even called? The Stockholm Cathedral. I don't know what it's called in Swedish because everything here is written in Swedish. But yeah, the list is pretty long, so it should be included in there. Places like the Royal Palace as well and everything. And yeah, this should be a Lutheran church. Oh, here's more candles. Here, look at that. So there we go. See, you can pay via card for the candle. You can put €1, but you also pay via card. Chris says, I like it. Just say I have the key to the city and walk in. She was a bit shocked because she hasn't seen that pass before. So this used to be in honor of St. Nicholas when it was originally Catholic, because it was built a few hundred years ago. But of course now it's Lutheran. Wow. So cool. Tony Johansson says, I'm glad the church lady was hospitable. Otherwise I have to pay like $8 to enter the church, which is already expected in Protestant countries. George says, I can't take it anymore, I'm starving. George, I recommend finding food. Whip something up. Susie says that was quick. Hopefully we're not stolen. No, luckily not. It is a safe country generally. Ariel, thank you so much for 200 stars. Jesus here is not as buff as he was in Denmark. Oh my god, Illuminati, look at that. Is that Saint Bart? It seems like Saint Bart had too much skin in the game. Roberto says Denmark gave him a god's body. Indeed it did. He was super buff in Denmark. I really like I wish more people would adopt the Danish model of Jesus. I think this is the original. Yeah, this is the original statue of St. George slaying the dragon. Or Sweden slaying those damn Danes. She used to stand outside, but of course, it's better inside. Wilhelm says I should go to Uppsala. Really beautiful cathedral, nice town. Oh, I'm glad. Tony says those damn smiling Danes, yes. Yeah, Sweden for those slaying those damn Danes. Yeah, That's right. Sweden is like that guy on the wrestling team who's like very big and he gets beaten by the smallest dude. And then when he wins, finally, he gets a little bit too crazy, starts like roaring and getting super excited and screaming. He becomes a very sore winner. That's basically Sweden versus the Danes. The Danes was the tiny little guy in the wrestling team who was actually pretty good. Oh my God, Inferno. Not the movie, like the actual Inferno.
Merci également. We see the Danes as our annoying little brother, who's actually pretty damn powerful. Thank you so much. Have a great day. C'est pour toi qu'on va faire ça en toute une heure. On va démonter les pièces en un jour et tu peux lire et remonter. Hein? On va faire ça pour toi.
Mudan says Ariel's checking the steel content of the bells. Yep, doing inspection. Real stone? Yep, real stone. Not plaster. One of the most disappointing tourist things I've ever experienced was going to Prague. I haven't featured it in live video, but this was before Urbanist. I went to Prague and I went to the beautiful castle and the museum, and I was seeing all these wonders and treasures and jewelry and cool artifacts from Czech history. And as I go towards the end of the museum, I see a sign saying the majority of the works inside this castle are replicas. And I felt so cheated. I was like, wow, these are like plaster. And I was like looking at them in awe. They should have told me that in the beginning, but they told me that at the end. Let's see which way to go. I think it's this way. Oh, how I miss Danish hot dogs. Robert says the Mona Lisa is also a replica, but they don't advertise that fact. Yeah, Rick, that's interesting. Yeah, I've talked about that before. So, thank you, Robert, for that. This is one of the oldest remaining telephone boxes in the city. This is Rick's telephone, or Rick's telephone. Does not belong to a guy named Rick. It's the National Telephone Service. And just like in the UK, it's meant to save lives. So we see a defibrillator. One of the hardest words to pronounce. Defibrillator. Dia says you also did a short video on this. You guys are on top of my short videos. For some reason, there are eggs here. Look at that. In the 1980s, teenage kids found a hack for these telephone boxes. They ended up finding out that you can make a telephone call and include other people for free. And it could be a lot of people, dozens. So they started talking on these phone booths in their homes all around the city, and they were making what was the original chat rooms. So these were the original chat rooms in the 1980s, or basically a WhatsApp group where too many people are invited and you're getting blown up with notifications. That was the original of that back then. So you could just imagine a bunch of teenagers around the phone here talking to dozens of other people. Basically the original Tinder. This is the 1980s Tinder right here. You can call this a Tinder box. And it's green, yeah. It's green. Really cool look. The cell phone company was established in the 1880s, but Rick's telephone was a monopoly for many, many decades until just about 20 or so years ago it became Telia. So it still exists to this day. All right, let's go to our final stop here. Ooh. Swedish Meatballs. Mmm. Of mysteries. Peter says 1980s? No, 1980s is when they found that hack. Not the 30s. The phone booth is older, but that hack was from the 1980s. Sorry, there was music. Ooh, is this hot dogs? No. No, we're not in Denmark anymore. It's just ice cream. I got excited there for a second. I thought it was a Danish hot dog. I'm not sure if this water is potable, meaning that you can drink it. Susie says, so glad you stopped raining for you. Yeah. Earlier today it was raining like crazy, but luckily it's a lot less. This is the Nobel Prize Museum. And we talked a lot about Denmark in the past 2 hours or so. And we talked about Gustav Vasa, the father of the Swedish Empire. Well, let's talk about a Dane, King Christian II of Denmark. He was running the Kalmar Union, which was a union between 3 different countries, Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. Those countries united in order so they can compete against the Hanseatic League, which was Germany, and a bunch of other cities all along that coast in the north of Europe. But Danes had most of the power. So the Swedes did not like that the Danes, a tiny little country, had power of a huge country. It's like saying that Britain runs most of the world. Oh wait, they did. So people were gonna get pissed off. So the Swedes were getting pissed off, and they started rebelling against these damn Danes. They battle out many, many battles, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. They're battling it out. And finally, Christian II gets ahead. He finds out that he beats most of the separatists. He gets all the way to Stockholm, right over here where we're standing, and finds out, I can't get through these walls. But these guys are screwed, the Swedes. They ain't gonna win, but I just can't get into Stockholm. So I gotta come into peace terms. So he says, okay, if you guys recognize me as king, I will pardon all of you. So he pardons all the Swedish separatists. Their leader, the separatist leader, Stu the Younger, dies. So they're without a leader, and they come into terms and say, hey, okay, sure, we will allow for you to become king if you pardon us, and we won't get any issues. They have a huge party during this crowning. Many people gather. Unionists, which were Danes and people who were pro-union, Kalmar Union, and separatists that were recently pardoned. They all gathered up to celebrate the new crowning of Christian II. But suddenly, as they're celebrating, the doors close on them. The Danes come rushing in, arresting up to 100 of the separatists, take them to a different trial. They are charged with heresy by one of the family members of Christian II by the name of Tolle. And then they are charged with heresy and brought right here to this square. This square was where they were all either hung, beheaded, or worse. This was called the Stockholm Bloodbath. And right at this building, apparently the stones that surround the windows in this building that dates back to the 1400s commemorates all those men that lost their lives at the Stockholm Bloodbath. This caused a lot of resentment with the Danes. One of the people executed was the mayor of Stockholm, Erik Johansson, who was a part of the Volsa family. His son, Gustav Volsa, had a vendetta against the Danes. And he was the one who finally ousted them out of Sweden and birthed the Swedish Empire. So here was Gustav Volsa, started the Volsa family trade. This was his father who was killed in those events. This was the priest involved in charging all of them for heresy. And King Christian II was this guy, who was known as Christian the Tyrant. So this was a place of very much bloodshed. And now it's the most Instagrammable place in all of Stockholm. Hundreds upon hundreds, maybe even thousands, more, tens of thousands of Instagrams are taking place here in these two buildings. People with their cardamom buns, a cup of coffee, nice dress, flowing hair in the wind as they take a photo in front of these two buildings. But little did they know was that 100 people were murdered. Okay, everyone, I am just getting in the nick of time. I have like 2% battery. Thank you everyone so much for tuning in. That was a tour of Gamla stand. I hope you enjoyed it. Put on your notifications because I got access to a bunch of museums. Some of them I'll be able to feature live in short live videos. Others I'll be offering to patrons. So put on those notifications or become a patron. Patreon.com/urbanist, which I'll pop up right here. Gorgeous architecture all around here. beautiful square, very old bakery here, which I may try right now, actually. And thank you everyone so much for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed this. Keep being awesome and always keep on exploring. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.